Hello, hello, beautiful people. Good to see you all here. Welcome, Route 1. Welcome, Devious, Vamsy, Sheila, and Zayad. Hope you're all doing good. Hope everyone is having a lovely day so far. Hello, designer. Hello, Marco. How is everybody doing? Like Zayad was already asking. Good to see you all back here. Doing great on my end. I had a pretty chill day. Doing some really cool stuff at work. Happy to do a shit ton of art, so I can't complain about that at all. Yeah, but that's all I can say. We'll just have to wait patiently until the game comes out. Dang it. I want to say so much. I want to say good. No, with Wednesday for me tonight, but I'm going to be next week though. Oh, awesome. Is that going to be on the library that you're working on? Looking forward to seeing what you're doing with it. Yeah, what is happening on my end? Let's have a quick look. I've been doing some website cleanup, I guess, or basically in general, like course improvements. So we're basically trying to streamline the process. So because before it was getting kind of messy with like the background. I can actually show it to you in like a little bit. But it's a little bit more streamlined now, which I'm really happy for. Let's take a look. So yeah, let me give you a quick overview here. I'll switch over to, oh, I don't have that one set up, so it may be broken. Let's have a look. It is definitely broken. Dang it. Dang it. Let me see if I can switch it in the background. Is that a new camera angle? No, still the same one from before, I think. I mean, it's been a while since I changed it, so. It's been a hot minute. I mean, I'm not going to set the whole thing up. I just want to show you guys some stuff here. So, let's see if it's the right screen that I'm capturing. There we go. That should be it. Oh. Hello? How do I submit the piece for the review? So this is like a community-only event. So if you want to get feedback, you have to become a member of our community. This happens on a weekly basis, so I'll be back next week. So if you want feedback for then, that's totally fine as well. Yeah, you'll find the community sign-up link in the description down below. Why is it not showing up? It ain't working. Dang it. This is what I get for being so excited about stuff. Hello, Bodie. Why is it not working now? That one? No. Okay, we're gonna potentially try switching it over. Let's make sure that we fit this to the screen. Okay, we're just gonna give it a try. We're just gonna pray and hope for the best, you know? Let's see. What if we... Oh, see? Now it works. There's no camera. Dang it. Something that goes wrong. So... let's have a quick look here. So this is what I've been working on. So this is basically like all the lessons that we kind of have planned for the course. And we're getting to a stage where we're really happy with the layout of these lessons. So yeah, this is what I've been working on. Basically trying to make sense of like how the whole course is gonna work and like how we're gonna split up like all the content. and which lessons we kind of need to build. Because we have like a couple of people working on the course right now, and they're working on like individual nodes. So each node in this network is going to be like its own little lesson, which I could. I've kind of implemented like a very rudimentary version, but these are like the ones that we currently already have that are in like a decent state. So as you can see, we're kind of like expanding on like a whole bunch of things. So yeah. And then every lesson is basically going to be just like, okay, this is what it's all about. This is all the stuff that you need to know. Yeah, and then I think some of the latest ones that we've added, let's see, we have like the intro to terrain creation. It's pretty good. We have like a bunch of videos in here as well. So it would hopefully be like a nice mix of, it will basically be a blend between images, text, video to kind of keep everyone engaged at the same time. What about a publishing date? So not sure when the full thing is going to come out, but we are planning to do a like early access release. So the idea is that the stuff that you can see here, the core lessons, and maybe some of the art fundamental lessons that I am building, we release those for like an early access for the people of our community. So they will be exclusive for people that are in our community already. And then we get like a whole bunch of feedback. We do a massive amount of improvements. And then we lock it behind its own price, which we still have to figure out because I don't know what that is going to be yet. And then we make it like a separate tier that is publicly available. So yeah, it will definitely be like a members only thing at first. But yeah, that's basically what I've been doing. So this is me just like planning out like the whole map and like all the lessons that we're going to need for basically all the specializations within environment art. And then we'll see how we can expand on it if needed. But we're basically just focusing on the core track, which is only going to focus on like the environment art side. And then we'll branch out to like other sections if they're needed. So yeah, I just wanted to quickly show that off. Will there be a battle pass? Oh, that would be fun. Gamifying the whole system a little bit. I mean, maybe it's sort of laughable, but I think there are like really interesting things that we can do with just gamifying the system a little bit, right? Where, I don't know, you get like certain certifications or you get like certain awards or certain badges or anything like that. That we could tie into it. So yeah. Yeah, right. So like badges would be awesome. That like the badges topic is actually like a bigger topic in general for our community because we have these badges that we do for the team challenges now, which we do want to incorporate that on the broader spectrum so that you get access to those badges on the site as well. You can download them, whatever you want to do with them, right? So that's kind of the idea. And then we can, once we have that system set up, we can then link it into the course as well. Collector's edition. Hold on. We need to get it out first, you know? The first thing needs to go out. In the course, will we apply the knowledge into a small project? So here's the thing that we are going to be doing differently. The course that we are designing is designed to give you the fundamental knowledge, right? So it is not going to be like your stereotypical course where we take you through all the different lessons as we're building a project. The course is there basically to give you all the fundamental knowledge that you need. And then what we do on top of it, the way that I'm thinking about it now is that let's say you have myself as your mentor, and then we use the course as a fundamental piece, and then we build a project on top of it. So we're kind of doing like this hybrid approach where you can learn about like all the theoretical and like applied things in like smaller lessons and then apply that into like a bigger project. because that also gives like way more flexibility in terms of just applying like something, right? Instead of having to make like a whole scene that then also incorporates like high to low poly modeling and then also does trim sheets and also does this, we can kind of chunk it up, make smaller projects and make it way more focused than it otherwise would be. Plus, it also gives the flexibility for us in the future to be, hey, I think what is going to be more effective is that we teach people in this way instead, right? And that gives us the flexibility to then change a couple of lessons and then change our approach on top of those lessons as well. Because yeah, I mean, the industry has always gone through a lot of changes, so this kind of modular approach really works well so that we can just like chunk things up in places where it kind of makes sense. And it also makes it like way more accessible for people, because sometimes you have people coming in that say like, hey, look, I want to be a self-taught artist, but I already know like all of this stuff. So I can kind of skip it and then just focus on like this individual lesson that I really want to know about, instead of it already being attached to like all the previous lessons, right? So you basically still have to go through the previous ones. So making it more isolated is going to give us more control, and also the people that are taking the course more control as well, that they can skip and get more flexibility out of it too. So yeah, but we're full steam ahead on that. It is definitely going to take longer than expected, because we're building like the whole fundamental system behind it as well, right? So obviously, still falling into the same trap, underestimating like how long it's gonna take. But yeah, we'll get there. Like, we've been getting some really good feedback so far as well from like industry professionals that we're working with. So that's already like a really good sign. A completion badge for a resume and LinkedIn stuff would be cool. For resume and LinkedIn stuff. Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah. So that, yeah, that would be cool. Yeah, that is actually something that we are also looking into in terms of the team challenges as well. Because we want to give like, I don't know, some sort of certification or something to like the winning team, right? That would be cool. And we're thinking about, I mean, that's going to be a conversation that we have to have with the team, but we're thinking about the same thing, that we can have like a certification. Sort of like ArtStation did it, right? ArtStation, I don't think I've ever printed it out, but I have like a certification from like getting honorable mention on like one of the ArtStation challenges that I did like way back. And it's always something that's like, oh, that's kind of nice. And it doesn't take too long for our side, so that would be good to set up too. Harry's coming in. Hope you're all well. Can't be around for too long. I have a jam meeting, but I'll catch the video. Hell yeah. Hello, Coffee. Good to see you. New background. Wow. It's not new. There's nothing. I didn't change my camera angle or anything like that. The only thing that did change is I've added like the new team challenges. So these are like 3 of the team challenges from last time. And then, I don't know if you can tell, I have so many of them now. Like all the recent ones are up there as well. But I think starts from here, and all of these are like the last team challenge. Yeah, I love it. I love looking at it too. It is actually, this is something that I'm really bad at, right? So I'm really bad at what would be the way to say it even? I'm really bad at like recognizing and being kind to myself. Not kind to myself, that's like the wrong word. But like, I never pat myself on the back for doing like a great job. And I feel like this is like a very visual thing that I can be like, hey, look, every frame is like a team of 5 people that we helped get over the finish line, and we organized that, right? So yeah, I think as this wall is growing and growing, it's kind of just like dawning on me more that we are doing something that impacts like a lot of people. It's like a visual reminder of just like, yeah, keep it up, man. From myself, which sounds so weird even saying it, but hey, it is working. It's a reminder for us too. Yeah. And I think there's something there, you know, like you get to be on the wall, even though it's just like my studio wall. All right. For people that are new to this, welcome, first of all. A little bit of chit chat beforehand is usually the way that we go about things. But just a reminder, if you're new, feel free to ask any questions or bring up any topics about game development, environment art. If you want to get into the games industry, let me know how I can help, right? And then we're just going to dive into some feedback. So these are all people from the community that basically showcase their work, and they're looking for like a little bit of feedback from myself. So let's dive in. Let's switch it over. And then let me bring up Discord as well, and we'll go through it. I've already made some notes this time. I'm trying to do something different so that I'm a little bit more prepared. We'll have a look and see how that works. Cool. Right. So we're starting with Megpal. I've been able to work on this a little bit more this week, trying to push more towards realism. Oh wait, wasn't this supposed to be stylized? Or did I just assume it was gonna be, just looking at it from the looks of it itself? Okay. I also have an assignment for a tileable material, so I started working on a stone material for the bridge and maybe some other walls as well. Cool. So how is the rock wall looking in terms of shapes? Are they too random? Okay, we're gonna condense this a little bit because there is a new change that I've done in the announcements where I'm kind of trying to limit the amount of questions that people can ask this time around. Just to avoid it being like, just like, hey, I want feedback on like all of this stuff. So I'm gonna see if I can condense it a little bit for myself. So first is just the rock wall itself, right? And I think you were asking the question of how are the noise levels on the rocks in general? And so we're looking at the rock on the right. I think we lost a lot of what that, like the silhouette of the rock kind of got lost because now it's just, we just smeared like a tileable texture over it, right? And we kind of lose the shapes. So with everything that you do, and this applies to the stone wall as well, if you want to make something look grungy, try to cluster or contrast where the grunge is going to happen. Because if you just start applying it like across the whole surface, it is going to make it so much harder to read. That's also why I put them next to each other, right? Obviously, the one on the left was a little bit more stylized, but yeah, like the one on the right doesn't make it doesn't look more realistic just because we have like a tileable on top of it. I would find a way to make it more clustered, right? So that you have patches of like high density, and then you have like readable patches where there's just like nothing happening, or like barely anything in contrast, right? And that is also going to be applying to these guys as well, especially the ground, because the ground is just noise, right? And I don't think that looks good, especially because it just adds so much noise to the whole thing again, right? So try to, or like even if you have noise, like try to add different variations in the noise so that you have patches where the noise becomes bigger, right? So I'm just gonna remove some of the noise here, where it basically becomes bigger. Let's see. So you have patches where you kind of want to create like, okay, these are going to be like bigger blobs, right? And then you have like high density blobs, like kind of right next to it, to create like a nice contrast again. So it's always the same thing on any surface that we create. We need to think about that surface independently as well. Because if we were to isolate some of these areas, like this is starting to look nice just because you have like some high frequency detail over here. And then the rest of the surface is cleaner, right? And that reads well because there is a contrast happening. And there is, yeah, there is a contrast and there is variation happening in the surface. Whereas if you look at this, right, just from like the amount of noise, the noise just spreads on top of the stones as well. And it makes the whole thing harder to read because there's no difference in the surface treatment, right? So that's something to be very careful of. So that's why I had like my first topic here was just like managing noise and its clustering of the noise, or contrast, right? Like using contrast to separate high frequency detail from low frequency detail again. And the way that you do that is just by clamping like a bunch of the values that you use in like any map that you do, right? That is like a really quick way of doing that. So really play around with that and play with like in getting the ground to look right, like play with multiple layers as well, so that you have one big blobby ground, one high frequency ground, like really noisy ground, and like blend them between each other. Don't rely on like a single texture at a singular scale. Like play around with the different scales, like warp them and like really make them look a bit more varied. And the same thing can apply to this surface as well, right? So you would have, instead of applying one tileable across the whole thing, play around with multiple tileables, right? So that you maybe have this as like a base pass and you cut out like 50%. So let's say we have like separate areas. I don't know. This could be with a mask, or this could be by like leveling out like the height map that you use or whatever you use as the input. Right? Create areas of rest. And these are obviously just like random spots, right? So yeah. So that will be something to work on first. So really, really being more conscious of where you put the details, right? This one was starting to go in like a really good direction. Obviously it was more stylized, so that's why I thought we were going in the stylized direction. Let's see. So same question about like the rocks as well. Is there too much noise? And as far as the texturing of the rock, should I keep it simple and add more variation in RGB math, or should there be more detail in the texture? So I think there should be less detail. And yeah, again, just like more contrasted detail. And then if we are thinking about like adding additional layers on top of it, that's where you basically do the same pass as here, right? So you have like dirt in the crevices, which is cool. You have like highlights on the edges, which is nice. And then you just have some like generic like color variation that goes over the whole thing, right? So keep that sort of mentality going. But I would really, so the RGB mask workflow is fine. But I really want to emphasize that, like, be careful about the amount of noise that you're introducing again, right? Because that's what I'm really afraid of. I mean, not afraid. That's what we need to be like very cautious about, because let's say if this rock still needs to have like an additional pass of RGB on top of it, it doesn't look like it because I see some like edge highlights and all that kind of stuff. But if you were planning to push it more, then we're making it even more noisy, right? So we need to, as a base layer, we need to pull it back a bit so that the shape becomes more reasonable, like readable, and then we build on top of it with textures again, right? So it's really It's really a push and pull. And in this workflow, you kind of have to test it all the way through to see if you manage to get like the full picture, right? So yeah, those are the 2 questions. Let me quickly see if there's anything else. Yeah. Okay, so you do mention that the grout on like the tiles was like fairly quickly done. Yeah. But let's see if we can then focus maybe a bit more on the rocks. The rocks are looking a bit better. Yeah. I would also say, depending on what type of rock this is, like the spacing is really big though. Hey, thank you so much. Happy to see you here. Alejandro Martinez is asking, my first live here. I'm a programmer planning to switch to game dev, specifically environment. Saw the videos with Fatima and got hooked. Awesome. Glad to have you here, Alejandro. I thought there was a question in that, but lovely to have you here. I hope that the switch is going well. It's interesting that you're switching from programming to art as well, because that's a huge switch. When I was reading that, I thought you were just switching from like programming, like non-game dev programming to game dev programming. But yeah, that's a big switch. I hope it goes well, Alejandro. Best of luck. Cool. Let's move on to the next person. Next person is Bodie. Oh, we got some stunning pieces today. Oh, beautiful. Let's see. Last time we talked about composition and adding more verticality. Since I couldn't match the exact same camera settings, I made a few additional adjustments. That's all good. I mean, I don't think in any sort of like concept translation, it's highly unlikely that you'll get like 100% like match. And I honestly don't think you need to in a lot of cases. I've never used any sort of like F-Spy or any translation software like that. I mean, like camera translation software, because that was just never a thing that I needed to. But yeah, cool. So let me see. What do you think about the current setup? Is the path readable, and is there enough verticality? So that's basically the first question over here. I like the way that the path is laid out. Like we're from like an asset perspective. I always feel bad that I can't do it. Oh no, like don't feel bad about it at all. Like, I mean, our job is not to replicate like a camera like one-to-one, right? Like our job is to make fantastical worlds, right? Like, and we as environment artists, like we're not in charge of like, oh, let's translate a camera. We're literally translating what's in our head to like 3D worlds that people can walk into, right? Like the people that are going to be playing our levels or our worlds, they don't even know that like what camera settings we use. So that's almost beside the point. Apart from like attention to detail, I guess, to like the concept artists themselves, but I mean, you're still doing your own interpretation, right? So but let's see. So first question is about the path. Like I was saying, I think the path is very clearly laid out, especially because it is free of any clutter, right? So we have this nice contrast happening of like a lot of relatively high detail stuff. So we got density here, we got density here, and then we got like clean surfaces, like kind of leading you like all the way through, which is quite nice, right? I really, really like that. So that contrast between the path and the assets is nice. I guess we could call it like, set dressing contrast, right? Because that's usually, if we're talking about it in like a professional setting, this is literally set dressing. This is like the majority of the work that I do as well. So yeah, there's some nice interesting contrast between areas of rest and just like density, which is good. Yeah, so that's nice. In terms of verticality, I think you've got some like really solid shapes going as well. We've got like all these cranes, we've got like this tower in the back. So verticality wise, I think it's really, really good. Yeah, I like it. It is looking very nice. Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Maybe there's like additional, because we do got like the mountains in the back. I think maybe there's like additional opportunities to have like more stuff in the background at a certain point, and maybe it is worth pulling this mountain down so that this silhouette becomes stronger, right? Because now we kind of have like this unfortunate tangent happening here, which also doesn't help the situation. But oh, just to clarify, like a tangent is when like two lines like just intersect at like an awkward point, right? So we have like the scaffolding that's intersecting with the line of the mountain. That is what we call like a tangent. So if we move this down, maybe the mountain becomes like a little bit less epic, but I think it would actually benefit for the silhouette to stand out then in that case. After we do it, yeah, nice. It's also looking really soft. Yeah, exactly. When I'm looking at this stuff, I'm more looking at it from like, okay, what are the shapes? What are the colors? You know, I try to, I mean, you're 100% right. Like that would be like something to do whenever you got time for it, right? But it's more at this stage looking at like the shapes and like just the really fundamental pieces. Cool. We got some texture feedback as well, and then the priest boat as well. That was like a third like really quick one. But first, let's see what's happening in the chat as well. Wipes is coming in and saying, "Hey there, I missed this week from participating, but I'm working on vegetation, and I'm wondering about how to do subsurface scattering for the leaves." Subsurface scattering, I mean, how? That could be potentially a broad question, but usually you just set up in Substance Painter, if you're using that, you set up like a different texture. Or if you're lazy, and sometimes I do this too, you can derive your subsurface scattering from other masks that you have. So like grabbing your base color and then like doing like another mask together with it. Because obviously the thing that you don't want to have is whenever you have like thick stems, you don't want like light to pierce through it. So then you would kind of need to do like a mask. But if you want to get like a quick result, you could honestly just grab your base color, plug that into your subsurface scattering, and just do like, I don't know, like a multiply for your intensity, and then also just like a multiply with a color on top of it if you want to change it. That's if you wanna really quickly test stuff. That is probably the way to do it in Unreal. Otherwise, you will have to author a new texture that you can maybe pack into like another texture for your subsurface scattering just by itself. Programmer here again, thanks. Actually, I was always into art and been using Unreal Engine for several years, but just for hobby projects. I'm aiming for technical art. Yeah. I'll try that, thanks. No worries. Game dev jobs market is kind of hard these days, even more for junior positions. Yeah, but I would say that like tech in general, like if you want to do like anything, like tech in general is being hit hard. So I don't think it's necessarily games, even though that is my world, right? I think it stretches outside of games. But yeah, I mean that doesn't change that it is hard. I do see a trend of more graduate and junior positions opening up since this year though. So I'm seeing some signs that like companies are ready to basically onboard well, basically the next generation of artists into the industry, right? So there's some good signs happening as well. Let's switch it on over back to Bodie. So could I also get some feedback on the textures so far? Okay. On the textures, I think the textures are looking really good. Again, it's the contrast, right? Like hints of roughness, like here and there, like just like nice bits of contrast are really nice. I think you can really play up like how wet this area is gonna be, right? With having like certain types of like foliage that grows within moisture, like mossy, seaweedy kind of like plants, right? You can kind of hint at like a lot of moisture and that you have like foliage that is kind of making use of that as well. To kind of give you like maybe like a little bit of a pop of color as well. Get some like greens in there too. But yeah, overall, like the textures are looking really nice. You're highlighting them nice as well. So that is also really good to see. Yeah, honestly, not too much to say on that front at this point. Because at this stage, I think you're getting like a good general read of the situation, which is really nice, right? But you don't want to push the contrast too much at this stage because it's basically the same situation that we had with Megpal before, right? Where you want to lay a good foundation, and then whenever you do like decals or you do like additional vertex painting, or yeah, you basically want to add wetness to the whole scene, that gives you a broader range to work with. Because let's say we push our contrast really far now, then we are going to struggle by like adding those wet decals on top of all of that again, because we don't have enough like space in our roughness to actually make it stand out again, right? So I would go for this kind of look that you kind of have now, and then at the end in polish, pick certain areas and certain places where you want stuff to really stand out, and you can then use that with decals and stuff. So yeah. So let me just add like a couple quick notes. So like we said, a general pass is really good. So that's in a really good state. We get some like nice pops of contrast already, like some really nice like read on textures as well. Same with this section too. Starting to look like really nice. And then we wanna keep space for polish, or where you want to draw attention to like certain areas. Now let's talk about this priest boat, because you do have the idea of changing the front boat to indicate that it's a boat of a priest crew, or at least their cover. But I'm having trouble finding any reference for that. Do you have any ideas? Any reference for like a priest boat? I mean, usually it comes down to the sails, right? Like the sails are like the major identification of like a crew. So I would probably go with like, okay, what is some kind of like historically accurate like sail symbol that you can use that like indicates that it's like I don't know, that's just like a specific kind of church or something like that, right? So that would be like the first thing to go. So we can make those church related. Because it also depends on like how heavy-handed you want to go with that. Because you could honestly almost go with having like a couple of let's see. You can have like a couple of characters in there. And I know characters, the bane of our existence as an environment artist. But I think in this case it could work because you're trying to disguise them as like priests, right? But then, yeah, you would have to fill up the rest of the scene to make it Get nice though. Hmm. Yeah, so maybe don't go with that. He said the C word. Characters. No. Yeah, what else do we have? Because you could go like pretty heavy on the symbolism, right? If it's like church related, then we're expecting to see like some crosses or anything like that. But I doubt that we would see a lot of that, right? If this is like if this is like a historically, well, it kind of depends on if it's historically related or if it is like a fantasy thing, right? Because based on history, like when church and state wasn't necessarily that separate, like they would just be like military ships that also had priests on board, right? Where if it's like a fantasy, you could go a little bit harder on the symbolism because maybe now this is like a special envoy of like a couple of priests that are just trying to find their way or doing like a pilgrimage or something, right? So it kind of also depends on how you want to embed that into the story, right? So if it's a fantasy world, then you just have to, that's where you have to come up with, okay, what are the rules of this fantasy world, right? Like, how do I want to portray that this is like a priest ship, right? And what makes a priest ship stand out from a normal ship? So yeah, have fun with that. Because here's the thing, like I can keep throwing ideas, right? But what really matters is what you want to do. What you want to do with your art piece, right? So, but in like a very general sense, I would think about like, okay, what are the symbols that I can play around with? Like, what are like the most common things that you think of when it comes to like, okay, these are like priests, right? And then try to translate that, whatever those symbols may be. It could be, it could be like I said, like it could be chalices, it could be the sails, it could be like crosses, it could be anything like that. Yeah, anything church related, that's what we need to look into, right? So we're basically just looking for symbols at this point. Sweet. Nice one, Bodie. This is coming together really nicely, though. I really like the texturing so far. It's looking really nice. I love how everything is coming together. So yeah, job well done. And I'm looking forward to seeing how this is going to continue. Nice one. Smuggler's Rock. Who is next for today? Q-Touch is next. Wipes is saying, this looks sick, Bodie. Hell yeah, it does. Thanks for the feedback. No worries. Always love to see your work, Bodie. So thank you for participating. Falco is saying, I'm switching from psychology to game dev. I mean, honestly, that might be like an easier switch to compare to programming for whatever weird reason. I feel like honestly, like so much of the stuff that I do, like this is the way that I interpret art, especially. It's like it's so integral to like me and who I am that like honestly psychology sounds like half of my job sometimes. Which I love, you know? Like I kind of see it as like this very symbiotic relationship between what I create and who I am. Right? Like through my creations, I get to discover more about who I am as a person. And then who I am as a person will also dictate what I will create next time. So it's like this very symbiotic relationship. Heck you! It is indeed your scene. we're just gonna get started here. Welcome to the chat. Let's see. So I'm trying to create a detailed, realistic medieval mansion. I'm trying to achieve the quality of an environment that you would see in The Witcher 3 or Baldur's Gate 3. I would love any feedback on it. Okay, so we're gonna condense this down to like 2 major topics that like immediately caught my eye. And that is, the first one is proportions. So the proportions of some of these places like really feel off. So it would be interesting to place your character, like this little guy here, place them near anything that is recognizable to us as a person. Because some of these guys, for example, right, let's call out a couple of shapes. This trellis feels way too thick. This door feels slightly too small. And then that cart feels too big. The leaves on the floor also feel really big. That's true. And also, this is more like a broader thing, is that the textures themselves, like the texture in the decal scale, feels really big too. Because if you think about it, like, oh, this is my character over here. And this is like one tire, right? Even fully ignoring that we're talking about medieval times and you have tire tracks on the floor. Let's ignore that for a second, right? Let's just walk that past. This is also just way too big. Right, and then also the floor texture as well. It is probably scaled up too much because the scaling of it just feels like it is too big for the surface that it's trying to display. Because you have some of this like ground clutter happening, but it feels like it's just like way smaller, or it should be way smaller. I can barely read all this stuff. The foliage. The foliage on the house. Yeah, let's see. The foliage is a bit too large, yeah. I don't really feel like it's the main culprit, but it's a bit too large. I think honestly, at a certain point, like there are a bunch of things in the scene that kind of feel like out of proportion, that it just kind of throws off like our base perception of what the basic proportions are supposed to be in the scene, right? Because what we do as humans, like we have this instinctual like recognition when it comes to the shapes that we see on a day-to-day basis, right? Doorways, windows, like anything like person related, right? We have like a distinct thing that we can immediately just relate to it as well. Then it becomes interesting because what we need to do for a game perspective is that we need to exaggerate some of the shapes as well. So this is not necessarily for art purposes, but it's more for like navigation purposes, right? So that it is smoother for you to go into a house and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, there is an exaggeration element happening there too. Maybe less important for this because we're just making art. From a game perspective, that is important to keep in mind as well. Cool. Let me make a note here as well. I was gonna say, maybe this is because it's relatively early, but like these roof tiles, they feel really weird as well. It's almost like they're made out of like one solid surface, right? That's just like crinkling over the top of it. Which is not how rooftops work. That actually brings up like another topic as well, is the topic of references. This is going to be a small one because you can kind of go crazy with this topic. But there are certain elements like the rooftops where I'm kind of getting hints that we need more references. We need more stuff that is actually grounding our work in real life. Also, I want to make 100% clear whenever I bring this up that you need more references. That is a day-to-day thing for any artist, right? So don't take any offense when this happens. It just means that you haven't developed like your visual library enough to kind of assume like a bunch of things, which is fine because there's so much to learn in the world that you're not expected to, right? This is also not a thing that you're expected to do at work either. Like in a professional setting, gathering references and like discussing those references with your senior artist or your lead or whoever is going to be looking at it it's almost like a day-to-day thing. So yeah. Ground your work. So with grounding, I mean that is going to make it more realistic. Next, the set dressing. This kind of leads towards the references as well, but I made a note here that the set dressing feels random. Like, okay, we have like a barrel here. We have potentially some storage here. But it feels random. It doesn't really say anything, right? If we go and take a look at the reference that you put down, which is the medieval house that's been doing the rounds from Angelica Paulina. It looks beautiful. But we can kind of get a hint of, okay, so there's like a mini market happening here because that is telling a story by itself. And then you kind of have an area dedicated here. Let me see if I can zoom into it. And then we kind of have like an area dedicated here for washing, right? Washing the clothes, all that kind of stuff. And what this does is it gives like separate areas a separate purpose, like we would actually do in our house, right? So if you go to the bathroom, the set dressing is going to look different compared to the kitchen, right? Obviously, we need to like medievalize that set dressing and kind of think back like, oh, how did they do it in medieval times? Which is where references come in, right? Because we want to get a better understanding of how that worked and then translate that back into the work that we do. And then obviously getting some clustering so that we have like very defined areas where we as a viewer can look and be like, oh, that's cool, that's there, that's cool, that's there. Not that is happening with you at this point yet, but we wanna kind of cluster stuff together so that we get like a really good read of the separate areas that might be involved in telling the bigger story. So yeah, think about that. Think about how you can replicate basically the story, right? Like, what is a story here? That is the big overarching question of, hey, how do I set dress? That is by thinking about like, okay, what is the purpose of this place, right? A brewery is going to look way different compared to a market, right? They have different needs for what they need. So that would be a good fundamental thing to kind of get you started and then working up from there. So yeah, thank you for posting your work, Yutar. I hope that helps. Yeah, just keep tweaking, keep digging up references. If you ever feel like, there's something off with this specific thing, look up more references. I mean, I don't think I have my reference board for my medieval scene anymore. I don't think I do anyway. But that thing was enormous. Yeah. Thank you so much. I was starting to feel a little aimless Well, that's also a good reason. That's also a good indication. If you start to feel aimless or you're unsure about what you should be doing, reference, right? Get inspired. That just means that you have a lack of inspiration. Again, 100% normal, right? This happens to me too. It's just you have to get used to recognizing the signs and then put systems into place to stop you from just not doing anything about it, right? So if you start to feel a little bit aimless, open your browser. I mean, for this case, if you just want to get like a little bit of inspiration, a really quick thing could be just don't play because we're still at work. Look at screenshots or locations that you love in The Witcher, right? So try to type in specific locations and try to break down like how they did it. Hendrik, literally me at work, same problem. Me today at work. Yeah, it's totally normal, you know? Like as artists, like that is going to happen, and it happens fairly frequently. It's completely normal, and the way that you just deal with it is by either talking to other people or getting inspired from like another source. It could literally, sometimes inspiration can hit you from like any sort of angle, right? Sometimes just putting on like the Witcher music in the background. Sometimes looking at other people's work. Sometimes playing a little bit like after work, you know, like getting those juices flowing again. Yeah. You're welcome, Tiotar. Best of luck. You got this. Shower. Yep. I love me some inspirational showers. Honestly, it's anything where you detach yourself from your work, right? That's literally what this comes down to. Because in the current world, like we're so inundated with like distractions that a shower can work. Going for a walk without a phone or headphones or whatever can work as well. That works awesome for me too. So I have days where I'm like, oh, I'm just not feeling it, you know? It's just one of those days. Usually how I tended to approach that problem was like, no, I'm gonna make it work. I just need to keep grinding, you know? Like keep grinding. And then it didn't work for like, I don't know, 6 hours. And then I would finally just play a game and I get really guilty because I had like a shit day, you know? Whereas now I'm like, hey, I kind of feel like a little bit lost. Okay, let me just take a walk. Take a walk, do something different, detach, let my mind wander and then come back to it. And usually it like resolves itself. Yeah. Showers, walks. I don't know. Anything that takes your mind off of it. Cool. Next person. Also, I just want to throw out a reminder. I've also added a reminder at the bottom of our screen now. But then if you are new to this live stream, feel free to ask anything about working in game dev, environment art, or any career advice. Anything that can help you get into games or get better as an artist, feel free to ask it in the chat and we'll have a conversation about it. Next person up, Devious Phoenix. Working off this concept to create a Last of Us inspired environment where there was a birthday party going on as an outbreak happened. And now everything is in ruins. Okay, so we kind of have birthday party, everything's gone to shit, and everything is in ruins, right? Have you done mine already? Yeah, we did you first for once, Megpal. I know that we do your work last, but yeah, try to switch it up. So let's see. I really want to get feedback on how well the textures read and how well the overall composition feels. Okay, so we got. Let's start with the composition first. The composition at this point, I mean, it is simple, right? And I don't think that's like a bad thing necessarily, but it's just like I don't feel like there's enough here yet to have like a full understanding of the composition, right? Because we are missing like a bunch of foreground elements. We are potentially missing like a bunch of assets on the side, and those can have like a big impact on the composition still. So I don't know if that's by design or if you still want to add stuff into the environment for the composition, because right now it does feel empty. Right, so and I don't mean that you need to go and like, oh my god, I can only ask about composition stuff in like 4 weeks when I've like modeled everything like really detailed. No, you can literally throw in like a bunch of boxes and like whatever you need to do that you can already have like the composition set in stone. So that's basically the purpose of a blockout, right? Like a blockout is there to really define what our composition needs to be, where we have like a good understanding of all the elements that are going to make up that composition, right? Because at this point it might be like, I don't know, do this and that and that, and then you just throw in like a bunch of assets and it's going to be changing again, right? So I would get the full blockout in, get a rough representation of the most of the assets that you're going to be making, and then we can talk about it again, right? When it comes to what I can already tell in terms of like what we need to do with the composition is the light that is coming in. We need to channel that more. And we need to channel that on something, or we need to focus that on the story. Right, so what I mean by that is that now we have a lot of very bright spots in the scene, which are all vying for our attention, right? We need to find a way artistically that we can channel all that down to an area that we want the person to watch, right? That is exactly what happens here, right? It is rudimentary, but like all the light is kind of channeled on to this picture right here, right? It is very subtle, but this is trying to be like the brightest spot. And then we have this person watching her, and we have this connection, right? So that's where the story happens. Obviously, in your case, you don't have the characters at all, so we need to find a replacement for it. So I would, if you still want to use the same approach, so we have like a sliver of light here, what I would do is I would honestly have like a birthday gift card or something like that, and maybe a piece, like a piece of cake or something, you know, like something that indicates that there was like a birthday, but this piece of cake with like a little candle on it has not been consumed, right? And maybe it's like partially smeared, or maybe it's rotten or anything like that. Could be interesting, right? Because that's why we said this, right? So this light or our composition, our incoming light slash our composition is to focus on the story, and the story is the birthday girl, right? Birthday girl, and then whatever happened after, right? So these are just like some ideas that I want to throw out. We have like a birthday card, which is simple, right? It's a simple asset. You can make that in like, I don't know, a couple of minutes, depending on like how crazy you want to go with like the graphic design on it, right? But that's really simple to make. The moldy piece of cake, like that could be really cool, but it's going to be more complex to make, right? But the reason why I like the cake is because we can have an indication of time past built into the cake. Because you could have a pristine cake, which means that, oh, this thing just happened. You could also have a moldy cake, which means that like, oh, this is like a couple of weeks ago. So it's a good way to visually tell like an indication of time if you wanted to go that far, right? So we have a card. Just want to give those two things as well. And then the cake, like we discussed, will be more advanced. The cake shows time passing. Right. Cool. Now we get to texture feedback. I want to hold off on that too, for the same reason that I brought it before. We don't have the full picture yet, so any feedback that I'll have on the textures is probably going to be invalidated by having you do more work on the scene first. So let's focus on getting all the assets in, making sure that the composition and the storytelling is represented. Very basic form, right? Like just simple block out stuff. And then we can start thinking about like the layer that comes on top of it, which is like the texturing. Because yeah, at this point, the focus is not on the textures yet, or like workflow wise, it should not be on the textures yet, right? So I'm more than happy to give you feedback on your textures next week, but I think we need to focus on other things first before we get to that step, because there's going to be rework involved in that, or it might not even be visible, right? Yeah. So I would say that would be my feedback for this time around. Henrik is saying foreground to get more depth. Exactly. I think that's what the concept is showing as well, right? Like the concept, if we really were to break things down from the concept, what the concept does well is, first of all, focusing the light on the thing that matters the most in the composition, right? It is doing that pretty well. And then also, like Henrik is saying, we have like this foreground element, which is just like a leading line that takes you straight into the composition, which also works really well, right? It's kind of like this blocking volume, which again, that's usually what I try to distill things down to, right? If you really look at it, we have this volume on the left. Even though they're like slightly detached in terms of like their space, right? Where they are in physical space, because they are so similar in kind of like texture and read, like it kind of forms like a subconscious like volume that is just blocking us from not really looking at it all too much. And what happens if we do, then there's all these leading lines that are kind of leading us towards like the center of the picture again. So yeah, we get contrast, right? Whereas the rest of the scene, there is dirt happening, but it is very, very monotone in terms of the colors that are being used, which is done on purpose. So yeah, that is the way that I usually try to distill things as well, right? Like, okay, if we're focusing on a concept, what and how did they do certain things, and what was the purpose of it as well? Because that's also the beauty of like having all of those barricades on the left, right? They serve two purposes. They allow us to focus the light where we want the light to be, but also they're a good narrative element too. And they kind of block the outside view so that we don't have to build like an entire world, because we have to build less of it now. So there's like a bunch of things that are just like benefits to us doing that, right? So yeah, let's keep it there, and let's talk about the composition and the textures again next time. I think that would be good for next week then. Noise, but yeah, thank you so much for posting your work, Devious Phoenix. You did ask another question. Want to know thoughts on the table and the chairs and how they feel in the scene? Any changes I should make? I think it kind of comes back to the same thing, right? Like get all the assets in first, and then we'll talk about the full picture and what needs to change. because we are focusing on something that is up here where we haven't laid like the fundamentals of the scene down yet. Let's do that first and then build on top of it. Next up for today is Paulina. Paulina doing some beautiful work here. There's a lot of stuff to look at here. A lot of eye candy. This is really cool. There's a lot of assets that came in, which is really what the scene was missing, right? So this is really cool to see. Yeah, laying out the assets like that. So good choice. Oh, interesting. So this one is a little bit cut off from the left and the right. Small things, but we'll talk about it in a bit. Carpets, towels, and cloth. Yeah. Bodie saying, look, it looks amazing. Swan Boy saying the same thing. Really awesome seeing how far the scene has come. And I saying, this is amazing. Yeah, really, really well done. These are like the nice surprises, you know? Then also, the font. I love it. Like, it is readable, but it has a hint of authenticity to it, which works really well. Which is not an easy thing to do, but I think it works really well. Okay, we're gonna be really nitpicky. Be careful about like the font weight, because this looks like it's bold. These guys, they might even look like a different font. Again, it's small stuff. Let me actually make sure of that. I know, this is so nitpicky, but I feel like you do such a good job on the overall presentation that it would be a shame to miss that. Cool. Presentation looks really nice. I love how the carpets feel as well. Feel like nice and organic, you know? Like not like stale like squares that you just put on the floor. They look like they have a lot of what is the word that I'm looking for? They feel authentic, I guess. Like they feel actually like cloth. Love it. Very chill scene. Route 1 is saying, looking good. Would you say with the try count to show the wireframe overlaid with the asset? Let's have a look. Let's in that case, let's talk about the presentation then, right? I think that would be... I think this might be a case where if you're showing the try count and you want to do a wireframe, do like a wireframe GIF. I need to write more readable. And what I mean with that is that we're switching from, oh, this is non-wireframe and it is wireframe, right? And just blending between the two, or like switching between the two. I think that would work for something like this. Because it would be nice to see the wireframe. Hi, Paulina. Lovely to have you here. Oh, I didn't even read your first beautiful paragraph. So, you said in the beginning, just wanted to say thank you for all the help and advice. I'm now very close to the finish line with my project and with a deadline in 3 weeks. And I feel so much more confident in environment art, majorly because of your guidance and content overall. Appreciate it. But honestly, you did all the work. Like, this stuff looks fantastic. I wish your GPU never crashes and your tea is always the perfect temperature. Thank you so much. I do have bad news because 2 weeks ago my main hard drive crashed. So, but I do appreciate your well wishes. Maybe you should have done it 2 weeks earlier. You know? Oh, dang it. No, thank you so much. That's a beautiful message. Yeah, this stuff looks really nice. Okay. Let's have a look. There were like some minor things, right? So we have stuff clipping at the edge here. give it just a little bit more space. This would literally just be like moving the camera out like a little bit. Just to make sure that it's not so close to the edge. Same thing here, right? Like, give it a little bit more space. A little bit more. Also, this would actually be good to highlight. And this can be like tiny, right? But just say like, oh, this is the base color, this is the normal. Like, for base color, normal, and all that kind of stuff, it usually doesn't matter. But when it comes into like these guys, then it's like, okay, which is what, right? Because I can make assumptions and I can be like, oh, this is going to be that, this is going to be this. But you might have set them up in the wrong way or the correct way, or using them in like a very interesting way. You don't want to lose that, right? So so that would be good to highlight as well. So names. Texture names. The font is looking awesome. Love it. This one is still a bit tight on the edges, but it's better than the one above. So that's good. I would also suggest a merge map for the breakdown. Not really. I mean, you can do it, but I think at this point everyone is doing it anyway. And the relevancy of knowing how to pack multiple textures in like a singular, well, pack multiple different channels into like a different texture is going to depend very heavily on the workflow that's being used by the studio. So I personally don't really care too much about it. To me, what I want to see when I see textures is I want to see that you have a knowledge about the actual information that you're putting into your textures, and that you properly know what texture is used for which thing, and if you have the correct values for it. So really stupid example is like, let's say you have those bits of carpet, and then you have like a white metallic map. Then I know instantly that you fundamentally have a misunderstanding on how things work, right? That's a dumb example, but that's basically all I want to know from like a texture overview. So like the actual act of like merging into like an RGB texture is less important, because it's also so independent, or so dependent on the studio. Fun fact, the font is called the Kiev region, after the capital of Ukraine, where it was developed. Nice, that's awesome. That is awesome. Yeah, it looks so good. I like it. Had a very distinct but readable style. Cool, okay. Let's move on to the other thing here. So what can be improved? I made a couple of notes already. I think lighting. I think the base lighting is really good. But the reason why I wrote lighting is because I want to potentially have like a little bit more complexity in the lighting and the colors that are being used. Because what I mean with complexity is that the entire scene feels really yellow at this point. But what could be interesting to see is that you have relatively orange light come in. So maybe having less stronger orange light, and then introducing blues in the shadows so that we get a little bit of complexity in the actual colors in the scene. Let's see. Because yeah, it does look like the sun is also really low as well. So that's why it has like a stronger color. It's almost like magic hour kind of times, right? That does give it like a very distinct like look, right? So let me note that down. So if you have like an orange light, one of the easiest things to do, well, this is mostly post-processing, right? Like you can control the shadow specifically, and if you just like bump up like blue in those regions, that's already gonna look quite nice. And it depends on how far you want to push that, but I'm sure that you can play around with that. You still have a bit of time to do that anyway. Next, the atmosphere and the effects. So what I was thinking about here is I do want to see some dustiness happening, right? Like some dust particles or something like that to indicate that this is going to be like a, even though like this house is well maintained, because just of the nature of the house, I think there's going to be like a lot of dust introduced and all that kind of stuff. So that could be potentially something to look into. And it kind of works hand in hand with like the strong God rays that you have coming in from the outside as well. So like slightly dusty. It could be cool. Have a look what else could be interesting. We're gonna dive into some like nerdy territory here. I don't know them by hand, but there are some really cool what are they called? Console commands to look into. Do I have like any space somewhere? Right, I'm just gonna hide this guy over here. So console commands. So the ones that I would recommend to look into is, and you'll have to look this up. These are like 2 console commands, but they are to add SSAO back into your scene. Right, so you would literally look this up. So SSAO in Unreal Engine 5, and you're gonna land on a video that is gonna explain the exact things that you need to do. It's just 2 console commands. What this does is SSAO stands for Screen Space Ambient Occlusion, and what that does is Lumen doesn't do a good job in connecting surfaces together, right? So for example, we have a perfect example here where this might be, Jay's putting them in the chat already. Thank you so much for that, Jay. Is that the ones that because they did an update to that, right? So short range AO, I think those are the most up-to-date ones, right? Because I know that at like 5.2 you needed to update them. Yeah. Thanks for that, Jay. So those are the 2 console commands to basically make it feel like your objects are more grounded. Okay, those are the 5.5 ones. Awesome. Thank you, Jay. And that is basically going to reduce this kind of stuff, where it feels like this chest is kind of floating off the ground, and it's going to make things feel grounded. And that's going to help a lot as well. Another console command, one that I always use, is sharpen. And I usually set that to like, I don't know, a 1.2 to like a 1.5. Feel free to play around with that. That is basically going to sharpen the output. Let's have a look. I was gonna say you could play around with some like heavier depth of field as well. It's not a console command, but you do some really cool stuff. Let me see. Are there other ones that I use? I think those are the most common ones that I use and are going to be really useful for this scene in particular. The SSAO one is going to be really nice. The sharpen one is also going to be really good. And then honestly, the last thing that I would do for polish is just doing post-processing. So post-processing, for that, I would look into using an LUT, which is a LUT, which stands for a color lookup table. Basically, it allows you to transfer data between Photoshop and Unreal. So you can basically do your post-processing in Unreal, in Photoshop, then take that texture and the data, bring it back into Unreal, and then you have your same post-processing setup in there as well. So that's one that I always recommend. It's been a while since I used it myself. I kind of do my post-processing now in Unreal itself, but this is just like a more approachable way if you're not comfortable with doing it in Unreal. Because especially color correcting, if you're not used to like the amount of sliders and, oh my god, the amount of things that you can do, it gets quite fuzzy, you know? Or DaVinci Resolve is also a good option. But yeah, like the reason why I mentioned it a lot is like that's like the beginner version, and then you can go into Unreal or in DaVinci. I would actually, yeah, I would need to give DaVinci Resolve a try to see how approachable it is, because I know that in the beginning I was struggling a lot with color correction in Unreal, but I haven't tried Resolve yet. That would be a good one. Yeah, that's what I would say. So lovely work. Yeah, awesome job. It looks really, really nice. Done a good job on all of this. I like the way that you're presenting it too. Oh, there might be one more thing here. Honestly, if you have an empty map, I'm thinking, because this is probably going to be your metallic map, right? And it's literally going to be no information. So I think I would want to replace it with UVs, just like the UV overlay. That's also potentially helpful as well. But yeah, obviously you use like your metallic map in this one. So maybe just having that on the side somewhere, maybe you can scoot that in. Isn't that helpful, potentially? Yep, lovely stuff though. Awesome job, Paulina. Yeah, it just honestly, like, stuff is looking really good, right? It just really comes down to like finessing the final result, really playing around with like how much you can squeeze out of like the post-processing and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, awesome job. This was lovely to see come together. So yeah, again, great work. I'm looking forward to seeing like the final thing when everything is like done and dusted. It's gonna be good. So have fun. Oh, but there the light is very harsh on the surface. Dun, dun, dun. Wait, let me see. So DaVinci Resolve is a newer version. It finally has crypto matte and multi-layer support. Multi-layer support. Multi-layer EXR. See, that's the stuff that I've never never had anything for, you know? Yeah. I know, like this stuff you're talking about, right? Like where it's not like, that might be, what is that again? Like that's your soft radius, right? Like your source soft radius or something like that in your lights. Shit. Something like that. Radus. Something like that to soften up your shadows a little bit, especially in cases where they're like really harsh. Cool. Thank you, Paulina. Best of luck. I'm moving on to the next person. And yeah, thank you for your feedback as well, Henrik. Love it. Next one is from Sheila. Oh, I've been waiting for this day, Sheila. Just to have a look at it, honestly. It looks so pretty. Moonlight in the chat is also saying absolutely gorgeous. So much work here. Sheila is saying, I think it's finally time to ask for some feedback on this. Let me zoom out. Let me give you like the full overview, right? Ah, look at that. Take it all in. While I read this, it's mostly the polish stage now. Stuff that is temporary are cables, cloth, where I want to add more around, especially where the buildings are closer. Also, the sand texture needs to be redone, as it looks more like the Caribbean now. Okay, I didn't even notice that. Let's have a look in a bit. No need to go through like all the screenshots in detail, but I'd love to know if anything stands out at first glance, and if there's anything you suggest to improve on the scene at this point. Why are you playing Overwatch? The new Valorant map? Yeah, this stuff looks so good. It looks really, really good already. Looks so pretty. Also just like smart use of like textures, you know? It's like smart reuse between like a lot of the surfaces. There's a lot of big brain environment stuff going on, which I love. Sheila is in the chat. Hello, Sheila. Doing an awesome job here. Let's have a look. So, what did I note down before we got started? More details. So, smaller assets and like unique corners. But I think what I'm gonna do is number 1 and 3 are actually somewhat the same, or we can make them the same. So what I mean by that is that, so when I talk about like, hey, maybe you can have like smaller assets or like unique corners, what I'm really looking for is like areas that are like standalone, right? Because a lot now looks great, but I feel like there's like a lot of opportunity to do like small little bits of storytelling. For example, we have some of this stuff going on, which is nice. But I feel like there's already so many assets and so much stuff that you've made where we can just like really quickly repurpose it to create like little additional stories with the content that's already there. What I mean by that is, let's say we have this shot over here. Let's imagine, so we have a do we have like a chair or something like that? So let's put a chair up here. There's 2 people sitting under a balcony having breakfast, you know? The person next to it. Hold on, I'm gonna look for. Oh, look. Okay. Oh, we even have it here. So the person next to it has like one of those like rollout, like little. What is this called? Shades, I guess. And we can just repurpose that from this, right? We can just like recolor it. And then they could potentially have just like a bunch of like plants. A canopy. Yes. Thank you, Swan Boy. And you can see that I'm trying to infuse like certain areas with like a little bit of more personality, right? And obviously you don't want to do that everywhere. But if you want to pull attention to like a certain region, right? Let's say this area, it would be kind of nice to add more props here and just leave the rest like a little bit more barren, right? And then that becomes like a corner that kind of stands alone by itself. But even on these balconies, just having like a little plant pot can add a lot. Or just having like a additional piece of gutter that comes along the side and it drips down there. And it's literally, I'm just looking for what you already have made to kind of add like little bits of like unique storytelling, right? Or just like a little bit of flavor, basically. Right, so this is gonna be flower balcony people. These people are gonna have like breakfast on the little terrace. These people might just have like a chair or maybe like an additional plant pot. Right, and then we can kind of go through most of these. Yeah, most of these shots, and kind of just like do like little tweaks here and there, repurposing what you already have, and really adding some like flavor to the whole thing. I think that's a great idea. So maybe like towels like on the beach. Wait, hold on. Because you are going to be making cloth, right? So I'm wondering if we can then repurpose that cloth to just make like a beach towel. So honestly, you might even just get away with using like the texture that you have on here and just making like a couple of simple beach towels, you know? That could be cool as well. I love that idea. Let me note that down, right? Towels. Oh, this reminds me when we went to Cinque Terre, walking around in Rio Maggiore. It's such a long time. Oh my god, more than 10 years ago now. Jeez. Let's see. Okay, so that was basically point 1 and 3 sort of combined, right? Where I don't really want you to make like a bunch of like smaller assets, but just have like a couple of places where there's like, oh, there's like a little bit of a story happening here, right? I think even Tiago Claffin in this course has like this example where you don't necessarily want to, I mean, we're just going to take this random screenshot, right? You don't necessarily want to put plants on everyone's like front door, but you just have like a lot of plants here, right? You just have like a cluster of plants here, and then you just leave like the rest of it like a little bit more barren. So again, just clustering stuff together, right? That has like a big impact as well. And then you can do the same with the cables as well. Yes. This looks so good though. So much work. Yeah. So that's basically 1 and 2 combined, right? And I think another area where you could really like push it over the edge is just like going in and doing more with decals. You do have, but I think this is like second UV workflow stuff, right? But you can do like way more with decals by just having like the back of this with like a little bit of moss or something like that. I mean, you are making like good use of like all this stuff. It might even be worth it doing, like if you have drips going down, also having them going up here. Because then we kind of create like this scenario where, oh, there's just like moisture in the corner, right? And again, this is like super, super small stuff, right? Same thing here, right? You kind of have like this dirty edge, which looks great, but there's no connection to the floor, right? So I would expect this floor to also be like affected by the same sort of dirt that we then have like on that little area there. And then yeah, we can do the same, like a light pass. And again, like what I'm imagining is you just make like a set of decals, which is just like, you already have like a bunch of them lying around, I'm assuming. It's just taking a day and literally going through like every screenshot and like basically having your left screen, which is just like the scene, and then your right screen is just like you're placing stuff down as you're looking at your scene, right? To just really make it like the extra mile, really pushing it. But that's what I mean. Like, honestly, like, yeah, awesome job already. Those are the two things that I would probably focus on. Obviously, the first thing that we talked about, that's going to have like the biggest impact. And then the second one is just basically just putting like all the dots on the I's, right? And just like really going in, finishing everything up, like really paying attention to like the small details. Oh, and I guess maybe that's where I want to bring up like number 3 again. There are probably so many things that you've created for the scene that you could like easily repurpose by just, I don't know, changing the color or like bashing it together with something else, right? Like you could, let's see. For example, you have these pieces of bread, right? And then you have these stalls. You can probably just repurpose them so that the pieces of bread is like a mini stall outside where they put like the pieces of bread outside as well, right? That wouldn't necessarily be too uncommon, I think. And then also, what if there's someone in town that has like a little shop that sells like plant pots, right? Or maybe there's like a little flower shop because you have like a bunch of flowers. There's just like those opportunities that you have at this stage of the project where if you wanted to, you could probably make more use of them. Like, I'm just imagining that this cute house over here kind of just has like a stall in front of it where they're just selling like a bunch of flowers. And again, repurposing what you already have in the scene, right? And they just have like a flower pots on the floor that they're selling. It could be cool. And that gives this scene just like a little bit of extra beauty. Yeah. Nice one, Sheila. Awesome work, obviously. Great stuff. Yeah, I hope that was helpful. Let me see, what's happening in the chat? Crabs? Oh, crabs would kind of be awesome. Top right, my fave. Yeah. The little courtyards, you know? Thank you so much, Tim. No worries. Henrik is saying more shader stuff. So god rays, butterflies on flowers, dust particles, leaves on the ground. Yeah, that could be cool stuff. Yeah. Like almost like opportunities for movement, right? So maybe in that case, if you're doing cloth, it would be kind of nice to have like slight movement in the cloth. Have it in the foliage as well, so that you add like a little bit of movement just going through the scene. Yeah, just looking for movement opportunities. Oh my god, I don't know how to spell this. Oh. Opportunities. We're just gonna ignore my English spelling, as we always do. So, yeah, because you have the cables. The foliage is probably also going to be moving like slightly as well, and then just having like the piece of the cloth like moving. Ah. Hey, Will! Thank you for the feedback last week. I believe that you forgot to take Whip Wednesday off my post, so don't worry about feedback me this week. No. Like, I did not forget. I just forgot to post the actual feedback that I was giving people. So you're not included in this one, but yeah. Sorry for not posting the feedback. Should have done so, actually. I was thinking about it before this one. You're saying opportunity dances. Yes, exactly. That's 100% correct. At least someone gets me, you know? Team flower / plant balcony. Hell yeah. Yes. I wish I could do artwork like this. I mean, you could. You could. It just takes time, right? Sheila has been finessing her craft since like I mean, before you joined the community, right, Sheila? I still remember the first piece where it was like the Asian shrine in the middle of the forest, right? It's where it all began. Our journey together. Yeah, it looks beautiful. Job well done. And yeah, I do have to commend you for your hard work. Yeah. It always feels like you're just like from one scene to the next, Sheila, so yeah. Don't burn out, but also keep it going. Yeah, like 2 years ago? Yeah. Cool. Nice one. Let's keep this train trucking. Who's next? Let's see. Harry is next. Harry is back, surprisingly, because last time we talked about Harry's work and Harry was done with the project, right? But he's back with a vengeance and decided to keep pushing it. Can I just get some general feedback on the project overall? So I condensed this down to the big things that need improving is mainly going to be the texture work and the way that everything kind of blends together. So with texture work, I'm kind of talking about just how the textures read and how you can make textures stand apart from each other, right? There is also like the side element here where the textures work hand in hand with the geometry too. Right, so let's say you have this plaster texture. You also kind of want like a softer edge geometry too. So we want to soften the geometry for tilables as well. But yeah, improving the textures would be like the first thing to do. So we're gonna go back. We're gonna say, hey, find some really good references and find specific ones as well, right? Because I mean, you shared references for your lighting over here, but these are like really different images, right? So what I try to highlight with that is references are supposed to be helping you getting a clear direction of what you want to do. And the direction that I get here is sort of like, oh, it is vaguish moonlight, and then it's also like vaguish like hospital or morgue lighting, right? Which is like, okay, we need to make that more specific because let's take a look at this one. This is like blue, very clinical lighting. Do we want to go that route? Or do we want to go this route where it's like more focused and more like greenish yellowish lighting? Because those two things, even though they kind of resemble the same broad stroke of lighting, they still are like on the opposite side of the spectrum of it, right? So that would be a thing to note on references, right? Because the reason why I bring this up is because I knew as a student that I needed to use references because everyone was telling me so. But what I didn't know is that it wasn't just like a thing that I should look up and then forget about. It's something that you constantly go back to. And if you find yourself not going back to certain images, that means that they're not relevant to what you want to do. So I would look into the references that you want to keep and are relevant to you, right? And make sure that they're really helpful to the specific things that you wanna nail. So yeah, they need to be specific and they need to be actionable. Right. So we already kind of talked about like the references, the textures. That's going to help you a lot. So for the textures, for example, what you would want to look up is, okay, what does plaster look like as a base? Right? Okay, what does like old plaster look like? What does damaged plaster look like? Wet, whatever you need for the scene, right? And then you get like a good understanding of like one texture that you have in your scene, and you kind of need to do that for every surface. Because that's going to be helpful in terms of, okay, how does it react to being in like this decayed environment for such a long time? Right? Again, we're trying to build an understanding of what is happening. What is it? This asset looks relatively basic as well, so this could definitely be improved when it comes to texturing. I know that we talked a lot about how to make the most out of a little. I think if you struggle with making something look good, potentially try giving it a unique texture. That might help you in this case. Because my previous assumption was that there was not necessarily made for an artist like really early in their journey. And I think that might have thrown us both off a little bit. So if it's easier for you, use a unique texture on that asset and just really dedicate your time to it and like learn how to go through the whole thing. Cool. So next topic that I wanted to bring up, blending. Especially when it comes to this. This sticks out like a sore thumb. So usually the way that we blend those two surfaces together is we have a mesh and we have to then blend that with a surface, which we do to decals, right? So general way that we always do like a transition between surfaces is we go from mesh to mesh. Well, this is very generic, right? But with like a decal in between. Because a decal allows us to use transparency, right? Which is going to be helpful for blending two surfaces together. Where a mesh is always going to be opaque, so we want to avoid this ugly edge that is happening. And that's where decals come in. Right. Blending can also apply to these surfaces as well. So where you have like a lot of damage, I think you're going on the right track here by like trying to localize it to like the surface that is like closest to the ground. That could work well. And that transition usually works really well in terms of like just read, right? But yeah, blending those different textures together. Again, it comes from like our understanding of, okay, how does a material work? Right? Like how does it react to being under like certain circumstances? Yeah. And then we need to find a way to like, okay, let's say we go from like tiles, which is usually like you've already done, you kind of have a lip that goes into the wall, right? Which also means that if we have like any sort of like moisture buildup in our scene, that is going to be an area where we are going to see like a lot of moisture, right? So that means that we have like leakage because there's going to be water collecting on that little area and then like seeping down. But that also means that that's where the most damage is going to come from that plaster. And then what is going to happen is, this is a more subtle form of blending, but this is going to blend those two materials together because they're affected by the same surface properties, right? By just being wet. It's just the tiles react by being wet and just getting grimier, whereas plaster is going to be more affected by that wetness on that surface. And that is going to blend materials together. So yeah, those are like the two biggest things that I would want to focus on, since it's such like a texture heavy scene. But there are other things, like Henrik is saying, that make the geometry like more imperfect. I think that's also a good shout as well. So don't worry about like any noob questions. That is honestly literally the reason why I'm here. I'll explain it just in a sec. Give me a moment. So we were talking about like more imperfections, right? Was there something else that we needed to note out? May add geo in the walls from the concrete to the tiles, like the tiles stand out, just geo on the seams between them. Yeah. Like I thought, like looking at it closer, there might be like a little lip, or it might be a little light, kind of. Yeah, I'm not sure actually. But yeah, that would be a good shout. Just have like a little. So this wall would basically go out, right? It's exaggerated, but yeah, you get the idea. Also, something that I'm noticing here, make sure that your tidables align correctly. Here as well, like in the corners, make sure that you UV map things correctly so that the grout is going to be intersecting in the corners. Because this needs to read as like a continual surface with like the ground being aligned to the edges, right? That's the thing, that's the way that like these tiles are constructed. Which again, comes down to references, looking around in the real world. That's why, honestly, we just look at like rocks or whatever surfaces, you know, just being like, ooh, okay, like they blended like this. There's for example, I'll toot my own horn for a little bit, but I'm so fascinated by this stuff. So if we go to my latest project, I had so much fun with this stuff. Look at the tile. This stuff happens in real life. And the way that I achieved this is not by making a material. This is literally the same tidable, but just with like a bunch of cuts and just like smart UVing that I just like distort the UV slightly so that I get like a nice transition going from like a straight corner or like a straight piece of tile down to like another straight piece of tile. And that is only same tidable. It's only doing like UV manipulation and just having like a bunch of cuts in the geometry. And that stuff is so fun. That is honestly what game art is about to me. Like finding these like really smart ways of getting more mileage out of, yeah, just reusing the same things. And then obviously you can be even smarter and be like, oh, there's probably going to be a scene behind this, so I'm just going to slap a poster on it. Done. Anyway, Paco is asking a question. So I'm sorry for the extremely noob question. That's not true. There's no noob questions. What's a decal? Is it like an alpha? Yeah, exactly. So it's basically like, imagine that you have like a plane or a box that has a texture on it, and it goes from being like an opaque. Let's say, let's do like a really quick example here, right? So we have our square here. This is our texture. And then we have our piece of dirt, and it kind of just blends as like a gradient from the core where it's like opaque, so we can't see through this, to like the edges of the dirt, so that we get like a nice blend between something that is not see-through to something that is see-through. And in that way, we can kind of use that to like have transitions between like multiple surfaces. A decal is basically a projectable version of that. There's multiple types of decals, but the decal that you'll often see in a game engine is a projected decal. So it's literally just going to be that same texture projected down onto any surface that you have within that box. So it won't affect like a singular surface, it will affect like multiple surfaces as long as they are in that same box. And that allows us to basically just plaster a decal onto multiple surfaces. That means that, let's say you spill your bottle of tomato juice and it falls from the table. We could technically just have like one big decal that is just like a spill decal, and we project that from the table onto the floor because it's going to affect like both of the same surfaces. So yeah, really, really helpful. I mean, there's a lot of different applications. Let me see if I can find like a quick example. Okay, I got a random example here. Far Cry 6. Where is it? So all these like puddles, they're all just decals. So even the path is just like a decal that's just on the spline. And then these puddles, they're just like little planes that we just like, well, they're boxes that we project on top of the surface, right? So then we can get like planes like that, or like puddles like that. To reduce also the needed geo, extra detail texture, more unique, break the tiling, blending, etc. Yeah, exactly. It's a really helpful tool to blend like a whole bunch of like surfaces together. Because you also have, I mean, this is getting a bit more advanced, but you have the concept of a mesh decal, which is basically, it's a non-projected decal that is built into your geometry. So think about, let's say we have like a wall piece. Right, so we have a wall piece, and then we have basically a plane at the bottom, which can then contain like a decal that has like all the grime that we need on top of it. But the benefit of this is that I don't need to place it manually on top of like every wall. I can just keep using that wall, and it's built into the asset. So there's like so many ways that we can do this. Cool. Thank you for sharing your work again, Harry. And then we got the last one for today. Oh, I just want to emphasize, Falco, or anyone else, don't feel any hesitancy about any questions, right? That's why I'm here. Oh, talking about questions, sorry for skipping your one, Kaio. Do you use skirts a lot for those? So let me open that again. So if we're talking about like these tiles, you can use skirts. The only reason why I'm not necessarily like a fan of skirts. So let's explain the skirt mesh, right? Let's start there. So a skirt mesh is basically the same principle, right? Like just having like a decal, but we're basically just making a skirt out of it. So let's say this is our asset. We can then just have like a bunch of geo around it that is kind of just mapped on like, I don't know, a texture that will kind of give us like a skirt, right? A skirt of like texture, basically. There's limitations to that though. Like for flat surfaces, completely fine. As soon as you have like any sort of natural surface, especially for these guys, like these like rubble pieces, they're almost all the time going to be on organic surfaces. Then you're always going to lose like at least half of your skirt because it's going to be buried between like another asset or terrain or whatever. So that's where it kind of loses like its flexibility a bit. And also like we're living in nanite days, right? Where those things are becoming less and less important when we can just like bridge the gap by using more geometry now. That doesn't mean that they don't have their purpose. There are to connect the floor with the wall. Yeah. That could be like a good example. But even there, like you're always doing a trade-off between the purpose of the skirt and the flexibility that you sometimes need when building a building kit, right? So let's say that we build in the skirt mesh into the wall, like the example that I outlined, right? Like the example of the wall that I just erased. Even in that circumstance, like it's going to restrict you to use that wall in a certain way, because we always want the damage or like the dirt to be aligned with the bottom of the wall. So let's say for whatever reason, I can only have like a wall that is like 2 meters tall. I can't sink that wall into the floor anymore, because then I'm losing the skirt, right? So yeah, there are like, so it becomes like a little bit more prohibitive, and in that case, you kind of wanna be like very rigid with how you use your walls. So it's always a trade-off of, okay, are we going to use this consistently, and are we going to use it on like flat surfaces, let's say? Sometimes that's the case, right? Like sometimes you have games that need to cater towards easily navigable places, like for example, like competitive FPS shooters. There's less variation in the surfaces because that will fuck with your aim, right? So usually those levels are simpler in terms of like their raw geometry. So that might be a case where you want to use it more. Or there are even cases where it might react dynamically to where you place it. So for example, you had some really cool stuff. And I think a lot of companies do this now, but let's say you have pebbles that you want to place on the floor. You can set this up in Unreal as well, but it would basically, you would have like a group of pebbles, and those pebbles would conform to whatever piece of landscape you would put them on. So you could technically do the same thing with like a decal as well. That the decal would always conform to like the surface, for landscapes especially. Yeah, those are some good questions. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I don't think skirt meshes are that relevant. Yeah, that relevant in games anymore in general. At least I've not really used them myself. I think actually what could be like a more modern take on a skirt mesh is that you generate it on the fly by using a tool or something like that. So let's imagine a tool that would generate let's say a building or something like that, right? It would generate like a building, and then based on what we feed it, let's say it's in a separate piece of the world where we want to generate it, it can then take into account like the surface that it's put on, and then automatically generate like a skirt mesh based on that, right? So a little bit more dynamic and reactive to what we need. Yeah, we're getting into deep tech land now. Let's go back to a Moonlight. I think Moonlight only has like one question this week. Let's have a quick look. So about the mosaic ground, 2 questions actually. How to avoid the stretching of the squares? I think we're mostly going to be talking about this stuff over here. So I might as well just zoom that out. So the stretching of the squares basically comes down to this, right? So the squares are no longer squares, they're rectangles. This basically just comes down to proper mapping, right? So like proper UV spacing. There are a couple of tools for this though. So let's see. I use UV Toolkit. I forgot what it's called, the actual tool that I would use. I think it's called Straighten UVs. So that would basically, you just unwrap like this curve, you straighten your UVs and it's gonna straighten them out and lay them out as a strip. Cool. And then you can just map it onto whatever section that you want. And it's gonna try to mitigate that stretching as best as it can. So that would be a tool to look into for this kind of stuff. But obviously what also needs to happen is you want to a certain degree, keep the same thickness of your geometry as well. For that, I've also had like a couple of suggestions where usually the way that I do this is I do it with a spline. If I'm doing like more elaborate patterns, what I'll do is I just have like a spline that follows the thing. And then I have a strip of geo next to it with enough subdivisions to account for how flexible this spline needs to be. And then with modifiers, I basically apply this straight surface onto the spline. So that means that I can draw whatever spline I want, and it is just going to follow that pattern. So I think, let me think out of the top of my head. There's two that you need. Two modifiers. Let me be clear. So number one is an array modifier set to spline. And the second one is the actual spline modifier to sample the spline that we need. And this is going to make it so much easier because with a spline, you can keep the spline really simple. So let's say this is only going to have like a couple of points, and you can really quickly just like map them, and then it's going to conform to whatever shape that you want, right? So that's super easy. Another option that I'll give you as well this is more for like helping you make like smoother surfaces in the future. It's called the Edge Flow add-on. So this is an add-on that I have for Blender. It's free, and it basically just comes from Maya. So Maya has this tool called Edge Flow, and basically, let's say if you have a, let me see, let's make it really clear. Let's say this is your circle, and like one of those guys is just like, oh my god, it's all the way here and I don't want to move it manually, blah blah blah. You can basically just select that vertex and just snap it back by using the Edge Flow add-on. And you can also do that with edges as well. So for example, if I were to select like these three edges, and I would say, hey, straight, or like edit the edge flow, it would basically look at what the flow is of the surrounding edges, and it would basically try to conform to those. Right, so it would make the whole thing smoothen out again. So those are like a couple of things that you could do when it comes to this. But yeah, in your case, the reason why I advocate to go with the spline approach, even though it's a little bit more technical to set up and it's a little bit more involved, is because you are doing so many patterns that you just want, in your case, the flexibility to just draw a pattern, copy the modifiers over, and then you're good to go, right? So another thing, I just thought about it. Let's see. Copy modifiers is going to be really helpful for you because you only need to do the setup once, and then whenever you do like a new spline, you just duplicate the whole thing, copy the modifiers, or yeah, you're duplicating the whole thing, you don't need to. You can basically just set up a spline and copy the modifiers from one thing to the next, and then you have your whole setup again. Yeah, so basically, when it comes to those squares, it's first you need to get the geometry right, and then make sure that the UVs are straightened out as well, so that you get like your entire UVs conformed to. Cool. I hope that was helpful, Guillaume. And thank you for posting your work. It's good that you're doing this now. Yeah, this is going to be so helpful. And it's honestly, I use this in so many cases now, just setting up a spline and then like arraying a thing on top of that spline. I use that so much. So it's going to be a helpful tool in the future. Cool. No worries. Nice. Okay. That's going to do it for this week. I won't be able to see pastries for the next 10 years now. I told you, it's a big project, dude. It's a big project. But hey, it's also, you're learning a lot. I can tell as well. So that's good, you know? Yeah, so just a reminder for people that enjoyed this chat. We have a, oh, Kaio is asking, portfolio reviews are done. I'm not doing portfolio reviews. I just want to make that really clear. I've made like an internal post in the Discord. But yeah, it's just, so the reason why I stopped doing them is because it was always the same thing. I'm still thinking about like potentially doing something different in the future where maybe we have like multiple people doing portfolio reviews. But honestly, like every portfolio review that I did with like 4 people every session, it just was the same thing, just slightly different because the work is different, right? So I would honestly say if you have concerns about portfolio reviews, like just have a look through the whole playlist. Honestly, it's gonna sound so weird, but that's literally it. Like all the information is there. What I do want to do in this case is, apart from this thing that I just said, at a certain point, I do want to make a video talking about like all the portfolio tips and like all the things that I learned from portfolios, like over the last couple of years that I've done portfolio reviews. So I will probably start working on that like rather soon, so that we at least have a condensed version of like all the things that I've seen and all the tips that I want to give people. But yeah, thanks for asking, though, Kyle. Harry is saying, I just want to say thank you. I'm going to watch through it, but I can't appreciate the feedback enough. Really helped me a lot with the environment project. I wish I found this community earlier so I could do a prop and then an environment. I mean, look, you always have a choice, right? Like you were at the edge last time as well, and it is, I mean, I'm not gonna make the decision for you, right? Like there is a reason why we're talking about it again, and there's a reason why you really want to push through this. So I'm definitely not gonna hold that against you. I think that's good. That's admirable, right? But then next time we can do a prop or something, or maybe a diorama. You know, just a couple of assets close together. But yeah, no worries, Harry. I'm glad that you get so much value out of it. So yeah. Okay, cool. This was a good session. Thank you so much for everyone that posted their work. It was freaking awesome. I cannot believe like the amount of like good stuff that like this community is pumping out constantly. So it's honestly it's sort of an honor for me to just be like a part of that as well. So I really appreciate like everyone who posted. If you are not a member of the community, feel free to join up. Go check out all the other resources that we have available. There's a ton of them now. And yeah, have fun, have a good night, and I'll see you all next week. Bye-bye. Oh, hey, that's so kind. Thank you so much for saying that.